Hi, this is Wings. So there's obviously been some really horrible coverage by the Indian news media yesterday after the crash. And instead of waiting for a really long time before I make one of my usual well-produced videos, I wanted to get some initial thoughts out. So first off, let's talk about the landing gear being down. So the plane had just taken off 5 seconds ago. When the plane has lost thrust, forward thrust or lift, and the captain has already declared a mayday. So in that scenario, raising the landing gear is probably not on the top of his mind. The landing gear being down would contribute to drag. It would reduce the amount of lift that is being generated, but that cannot be the sole reason why the plane completely lost any lift or forward thrust. So yes, the landing gear was down, but as being hawked by the panelists on these Indian news channels, that is definitely not the reason why the plane went down. There was another post online which talked about how the first officer might have mistakenly brought the flaps up instead of bringing the landing gear up. Now again, that's highly infeasible because the location of the flaps lever and the landing gear lever is in a completely different place. Now, if you think back to Yeti Airline 691, where something similar happened, where the captain feathered the propellers instead of bringing the flaps to 3. In that case, the propeller lever and the flaps lever were right next to each other. The landing gear lever is nowhere near that. It's physically in a different place. And the landing gear lever coming up is almost muscle memory. This is like saying that, hey, instead of me pressing the brake on my car, I pulled the handbrake. It's just not logical. So that theory is definitely just cooked up for conspiracy on the Indian channels. So I would say that that's highly unlikely to have happened. The next point is that whether the condition of the plane was suitable for flight. There was an Instagram post by someone claiming to be ex-Air India and saying that particular plane had hundreds of issues in its logbook. Unless your plane is brand new, I would struggle to find a plane that has absolutely zero issues. Every plane will have a logbook in which the crew will record any issues found in the previous leg. Issues found are classified into two types. There are mandatory issues that need to be fixed, and there are issues that are just been noticed but can be fixed at a later date. So before flight, the airplane manufacturer, Boeing in this case, would have decided and would have indicated what issues are mandatory to be fixed. These are the minimum list of equipment that needs to absolutely be working properly before the plane can take off. If the Air India plane had taken off without this minimum equipment list being satisfied, that's gross negligence. And I would be absolutely shocked if that is what's happening. I do not believe that to be the case. There was also another post by a passenger who claimed to have shot footage on the inbound leg from Delhi to Ahmedabad. And he showed that the in-flight entertainment system wasn't working, the air conditioning wasn't working, so on and so forth. Now, first, there's no veracity to claim that was actually the same plane and that was actually from the outbound leg. It could have been any flight. But let's take his claim to be true. Even if that was the same plane and the in-flight entertainment system was broken and so on and so forth, those are completely different systems. The non-working of the interiors of the plane have got nothing to do with the flight systems of the plane. And it would be a leap to say that, hey, because my TV wasn't working, the wings aren't producing lift. That's a leap too far. Let's also talk about the idea that the flaps may not have been extended. So what are the flaps? The flaps are basically an extension to the wings that increases the surface area of the wing in order to be able to produce further lift during low speed operations. So when you're taking off, you're not flying at cruise speed, you're flying at a much reduced speed, and you still want lift to be produced. Hence, the larger surface area of the wings will help you produce lift at those speeds. Now, if the flaps weren't extended to takeoff settings, in the main screens of the pilot, there would be warnings after warnings after warnings saying that the plane is not configured for takeoff. The pre-flight checklist also talks about checking the flap settings. It is so incomprehensible to me that that could possibly be a reason. If they've forgotten to set the flaps to takeoff configuration, not only have they forgotten it, not only have they not caught it during the takeoff checklist, and they've also ignored the warnings on the screens. And frankly, for someone with 8,000 hours of experience, I find that hard to believe. Now, people are pointing at the pixelated footage of the crash and saying, hey, I can't see the flaps out. Now, honestly, you can make whatever interpretation you want from that footage, because it's just not apparent whether the flaps were out or not. It's too hazy, it's too fuzzy to make out the contours of the flap. So I think this is dramatization. I don't think you could just by looking at the pictures on the screen whether the flaps were out or not. What I think we could do is, once we see wreckage footage of the wings, we could see whether the flaps were extended or not, and that would be a very good claim to see whether that was actually the problem that caused the plane to go down. Now, for a bird strike to have happened and for the plane to have lost thrust on both engines at the same time, it means that birds went into both the engines at the same time and caused complete destruction. Now, Ahmedabad airport is known for its birds population. It's not bird free, but again, the idea that a flock of birds got ingested into the plane right at takeoff, it's too coincidental. And also, we don't see those birds in the footage that we saw from the multiple angles that we currently have. So, and also, if birds were ingested, you would see sparks coming out from the back of the engine, which we don't see in the footage. So I don't think the bird theory also holds any weight here. And the other one is a microburst. So a microburst is when a gush of air comes from the top, pushing the plane down. A microburst would be a lot more sudden, but not the gradual loss of forward thrust that the plane saw. So all in all I'm trying to say is, I don't really know what happened. Every single theory that is being peddled has a counterpoint. It's incredibly sad that people lost their lives, but I would just be cautious that we don't fall victims to conspiracy, and we wait for a month or two before the interim report to come out. The cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder have already been found. I'm sure Boeing and the DGCA at the records, and they will come up with a intermediate report within a month or two, and all the questions will be answered. So let's not speculate and keep flying. Flying is still extremely safe, and it's one of the safest modes of travel and one of the pleasures of life. And I am currently at Chennai International Airport, and I am going to board an Air India plane. So hey, I'm not a hypocrite, okay? So all right, that's pretty much all I had to share. I will make an in-depth video when we get the intermediate report, but nothing else from me until that point. Thank you.